we'll actually start the formal part of the. So I'm Jacqueline Winstanley, the founder and CEO of Universal Inclusion and the Inclusive Entrepreneur. As you know, the Inclusive Entrepreneur is a global network supporting people who have protected characteristics, as we call them in the UK, when they wish to enter enterprise, and also includes others who want to support us along that process. So I have what you would call a portfolio career. I have a number of executive and non-executive roles. I am an ambassador for Pink Shoe and the diversity lead for Pink Shoe. I'm an ambassador for Glamsticks. I also chair the advisory boards for Ability Today and Foundation for Independent Living Trust, and I'm a trustee of Disability Rights UK. And it is lovely to see everybody on here today. Now, first of all, we're going to play Monzo's introduction.
Hello everybody, my name is Monzo. I am 40 years old and I have cerebral palsy. I use an electronic wheelchair to get around outside and a walking frame when indoors. I also use an electronic talk box and basic DSL to communicate. Over the past 20 years I have been committed to the disability movement. I have worked for considerable periods of time with various organizations such as Scope, Walsall Partnership Board, Walsall Link, Health Watch Walsall, Walsall Service Users Empowerment and the National Centre for Independent Living. I have represented local disabled people as chair of my local Physical Disability and Sensory Impairment Board for 5 years, and I worked with my local council in an effort to form a local ILC. I have also been a member and a supporter of DRUK since its inception. One of my aspirations has always been to become an entrepreneur. Since October I have started taking steps to start a business selling silk and wooden flowers. I have looked at various wholesalers and found one I would like to purchase from. I also have managed to find an accountant and secure a cabin at a garden centre where I can sell my products from. I was due to order my stock from the wholesalers and start using the cabin in April, however. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, both the wholesalers and garden centre had to shut, meaning I had to postpone starting my business. I was also trying to apply for access to work, but due to the coronavirus they have stopped accepting applications. To overcome the difficulties the coronavirus has caused for me, Jacqueline is going to help me with my access to work application. I also aim to start purchasing flowers and selling from the garden centre as soon as I can. In the meantime, I am looking at ways I could start selling online through Amazon and eBay. I am aware that it could potentially take me a long time to build up my business and I may face setbacks during this time. However, my long-term goal is to expand the business and have shops in multiple locations. I would also like to renovate and let out houses. The latter aspiration has come from me watching homes under the hammer over numerous years.
That's lovely, thank you. And it's great to see you here, Monzo, and also to see how your business is progressing. Penny, could you do a very brief introduction? Because obviously you're our entrepreneur speaker today, so just a teaser, because I don't need to give all your information away. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Penny Hardy. I'm a sculptor, mostly figurative work of ladies and gents in scrap metal, bronze and aluminium.
Perfect, thank you. So modest, but saving the best for later. Lady Sharon, please.
Hello, good afternoon everybody. My name's Lady Sharon and I am the owner of Glamsticks, as you can see behind. I've owned the business since 2012. I am a disabled entrepreneur. I'm also a member of Pink Shoe Club and part of the Inclusive Entrepreneurship with Jacqueline. And today I have some shoes on show instead of my blade. So yeah, thank you very much.
Brilliant, thank you. Noreen, please.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Noreen Cesario. I run a strategic thought leadership, marketing, and communications consultancy, also dealing in enterprise, called Market Accents. I am very active in women's economic empowerment and in girls' education. And I am also a Pink Shoe ambassador and involved in a number of organizations, either sitting on boards or assisting and generally trying to make the world a better place.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And if I could now ask John, please.
I'm John. I'm a disabled entrepreneur. I run a business called Spirit Motorsport. Things were beginning to look good before lockdown, and then everything kind of took a bit of a dive. So battling on, and almost didn't join today, and then Jacqueline twisted my arm, so I've joined for that today.
Brilliant, thank you. And James, please.
Hello, I'm James. I'm a singer-songwriter from Manchester. I have a hearing impairment, and me and Jacqueline announced last week that we're working together on a new song, a new project, with all the proceeds going to Refuge, which is a domestic abuse charity.
Thank you, James. And Susan, please.
Right, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Excellent. I'm not going to try and undo it then. I'm Susan Greenwood. I'm a consultant, self-employed, have done lots of work in the past with enterprise, disability, and mainly social enterprise and charities. I do some work with Pink Shoe. I'm a Pink Shoe ambassador, and I also work with the Justice Department and sit on tribunals.
Thank you, Susan. It's great to see you this week as well. Alice?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's honestly an honour to be part of such an amazing group of people. I'm here first and foremost to help Jacqueline with a podcast she's putting together. So yeah, I'm very excited to be part of that. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to join. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. It's good to see you, Alice.
Good to see you too.
Okay, so the first thing you probably noticed today is we've moved on from, normally we say our sort of straplines being very much this too will pass. So this is going to be really interesting if I can actually pronounce this. I've been practicing, but I don't know, we'll see. So this should be dum spiro vero. The Latin for while I breathe, I hope. And I think that's where we are at the moment. So this isn't going away, but it's very much about, you know, we've had the seize the day, we've had the, you know, it's going to pass. It is what it is, and it is very much, you know, we are here, we are lucky to be here, and I'm full of hope, and I think that's all we can do at the moment, and just be as resilient as we are normally. So just going through what we're going to cover today, we're going to look at generic business advice, disability related support, health and wellbeing session will be a little bit different today because Aaron's not able to join us, and we're going to showcase an absolutely incredible inclusive entrepreneur, and at the end we'll have opportunity for questions. So generic business advice, this is packed this week, so I'm going to try and do a whistle-stop tour of this, but we'll see. And don't forget that on the end of the slide there are links to all of this. So we're looking at the business support that government's putting in place on top of everything we've looked at previously. Now, just a reminder that the deadline for making the claim for the first part of the income support, the self-employment income support scheme, is the 13th of July. So if you've not done that already, make sure you do that before the 13th of July. There is a second stage, but that's the deadline for that one. Again, we've spoken previously about the business loans and the cash grants. What we're hearing from the Chancellor is that the bounce back loans, there's been a really good uptake on those loans, and I think that's been a bit of a lifeline for people. It's what everybody's hoping is that the banks don't alter the interest rate on that going forward, and I'm hoping that the Chancellor will hold them to that low interest. The cash grants, it really has been difficult to get these. The criteria for these has been very, very strict indeed. However, for those that have been able to access them, is likely to be a second stage grant available if your business has been disrupted beyond a certain date in July. And that's going to be people like we've heard that they're going to let salons open, beauty salons open from Monday, but a restricted service. So people that are still being told by government that they have to operate in a different way and can evidence business disruption continuing, there's likely to be more support. Sadly, not for, as we're seeing, John Lewis, Boots, etc., who are being able to say, but there's perhaps not the recognition yet that people are not wanting to go out there to the degree that perhaps the Chancellor thought they might do to shop in store. Massive take of online shopping, but not necessarily in store. Alongside that, we've heard that the hospitality and tourism sector are having their VAT reduced to 5%. That's been very, very welcome in that sector. Of course, other sectors are saying, what about us? The sector itself is saying some of this is going to be difficult to navigate because actually it's only for certain parts of a meal, for instance. How are you going to navigate what's VAT less and some isn't? So that, I think there's work to be done there. But again, the intent is possibly good. The introduction of a bonus of £1,000 for employers who bring their staff back to work and agree to retain them for a 3-month period. Because what is happening at the moment is people are thinking, oh gosh, furlough's going to end. We're going to make people redundant. So I think the intention is to try to retain staff and see how things go. So that, again, there are mixed reports from people on this. It's very difficult to see where this is going. Some people are saying, and possibly quite rightly, give the stores that are closing the support to stay open. That keeps the jobs. It's a really difficult. I'm really glad I'm not the Chancellor. Very, very difficult choices to make. There's also a £2 billion kickstart scheme to create more jobs for young people. And interestingly, what I was reading yesterday is a move away from the commitment to getting 50% of young people into universities. I have mixed feelings about this. There are obviously difficulties within the university sector, but equally, I'm not looking to see a sort of a de-skilling of our young people in that regard. And I would have perhaps preferred looking at how universities could adapt and do things differently rather than lower that percentage. But again, we'll see. The one that people have perhaps been waiting for is beauty salons and nail bars, and they'll be open from the 13th of July, but again, under restricted service. I was listening to a debate this morning, and it's a valid debate. If you are a guy and you have facial hair, you can go to the barber and you can have it trimmed. You can have your eyebrows done, etc. At the moment, that's not being allowed in the beauty salons. Anything at all to do with the face is not a service that you can access at the moment. So I'm hoping that debate over the next few days might change that, because that does seem a little bit strange. However, for that sector, particularly the beauty salons that have been held back later than the hair salons, it's definitely a welcome thing. Mixed reports from people. Some people are saying this is great, can't wait to go. Some people are a little cautious because how are they going to social distance? How are they going to navigate, for example, if you're using product, one person, and then you're using it on the next person, for instance, nail varnish. Be very interesting to see how that's going to work. Are they going to have separate nail files for everybody? It's going to be interesting to see how everybody responds to this, but definitely great that they're actually going to be open. In terms of disability related support, we're going to go through the recommendations again in a moment, and that will answer what are the issues. They haven't changed. I think there is still a perception that the voice of not just around employment issues and self-employment, but also health and social care, etc. There's a massive push from national charities to get government to engage a little bit more on this and actually try to get the voice of disabled people in these conversations. So we will go through some recommendations. Response from government, no different than what we've looked at previously in terms of the generic stuff, but equally the Access to Work Award. They've not updated any of the guidelines in response of the later recommendations that we made to them. But when we look at the APPGIE slide, then I'll talk a little bit more about that. And obviously for us, in terms of the way forward, when I looked at this slide, I thought, oh, look, you know, there's nothing really moving. But actually, to be having the all-party parliamentary group specifically around inclusive entrepreneurship starting, and an invitation to attend meetings with the Secretary of State, that's massive. So although, you know, there's not sort of banners and poppers and everything on this slide, that is really huge going forward. So I think that's where we're gonna hopefully change things going forward. Again, asking Access to Work to suspend the annual cap, fast track any new claims, innovation within our community is massive. We really do need access to the opportunity to have support to become an entrepreneur now, whether we are a key worker or not. Suspend the annual turnover requirement, again, very unfair if people who have an Access to Work award are held to this. Accept digital submission of payment requests. That's mixed. There is a definite directive now in the guidelines to do that. It's very much, if you get to speak to the right person, then you'll know what to do, and if you don't, it's a little bit iffy. Allow for longer access to the mental health strand of the award. There's no move on that at the moment. Fast track applications for ergonomic assistance when working from home. There is some movement on that in terms of if you request that, then that will be fast tracked. The award period to be extended for 2 years without review. Again, I think that's massive if they would take that on board. That would just relieve so much stress and anxiety for everybody, and for the department, the huge effort of going to those reviews when actually they're going to probably say, under the circumstances, we'll just extend your award. It seems a kind of an administrative unnecessary element to this. To recognise and to fast track any additionality claims relating to support workers who are self-isolating or are contacted and asked to self-isolate because they've been in contact with somebody who's tested positive. To recognise and consider the way disabled entrepreneurs manage their complex health conditions, and consider additional measures of support which do not require us to give up our Access to Work award as part of the process. We ask, but I don't think this is going to happen, to amend the self-employed income support scheme to recognise the particular needs of the disabled entrepreneur. I think that ship might have passed, but I think what we'd like to do is through the APPG and the meetings with the Secretary of State is actually maybe push for something independent from that that's specific for disabled entrepreneurs. So also, and really, really positively going forward, the creation of an all-party parliamentary group dedicated solely to inclusive entrepreneurship. So the RSA podcasts are being completed as we speak, which is great. We have the date for the virtual expo on the 21st of August 2020. We've now actually arranged a Zoom meeting for the 14th of July at 3:30 p.m, where we will actually start to plan that expo, that virtual expo. And we have the inaugural meeting of the all-party parliamentary group for inclusive entrepreneurship on the 16th of July. Now, sadly, that is going to be a closed meeting. That meeting is just for the chair, who will be Lisa Cameron. Some really good news, actually. Our vice chair is going to be Tanny Gray-Thompson. So that's really exciting. Those of you that don't know Tanny, she is an absolute activist in terms of anything to do with disability and improvements for the lives of disabled people, but also is an ex-Paralympian. So very, very honoured to have Tanny with us. And obviously we'll have that meeting, and then we will plan a year's worth of APPG meetings, and then, your input's going to be invaluable then, because this isn't about us telling your stories. This is your opportunity to have your voices heard. Okay, so as I said, this will be a regular slide on our briefings going forward. There's nothing more to update you on other than obviously that that inaugural meeting taking place on the 16th of July. In terms of how we achieve equity in this sector, that group is going to be pushing these things forward, raising an awareness of the concept of inclusive entrepreneurship, the opportunities for innovation and increasing inclusive economic growth, increasing the understanding of government, policymakers and the business sector of the way that people who have protected characteristics, how they actually create enterprise, removal of barriers to enterprise for people with protected characteristics, and to increase sector-specific business support and academic research in this area. To run a programme of events, and I'm really excited about this bit, to further inclusive entrepreneurship here and internationally. To increase access to finance, health and wellbeing support, and to host events with schools, universities and emerging entrepreneurs. To establish an accelerator programme, including mentors, role models, and an award ceremony which will be held in the House of Commons, which again that's a real achievement, and to enhance the digital platform. Now this is the exciting bit of today. So I'm just going to tell you a little story before I introduce Penny. So some of you may know that I'm a bit of a poet. No idea how that happened, but excuse me, I wrote a poem called Woman, and I was searching for an image to have alongside that, and I came across an incredible image of a woman, as somebody who was a sculptor had made this, and it was just had this flowing, it looked like hair flowing behind her, just such a very powerful image. And I used it alongside my poem for quite a long time, but I could never actually find out who the artist was. And then the universe did a wonderful thing and happened upon Penny, and I've no idea how I actually happened upon her again. So I'm delighted to invite to our session today. And what we're going to do, I'm going to introduce Penny. She will talk a little bit about her story. We then have a really exciting film clip for you to see. And then Penny will actually, on a slight slideshow, talk about some of her specific pieces. So fingers crossed, everybody, that the tech does work on this. And I'd like to now introduce Penny Hardy, and I can't wait to hear all about your journey. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for wanting to have me here. I feel very privileged. I'm a sculptor, as I said, based in South Devon. Have been creating sculptures for about 15 years, but I trained as a scientific illustrator, so that couldn't be further from sculpture if you tried. So I used to work for Kew Gardens as a botanical illustrator, but it gave me a very good grounding for drawing, which I think is a basis for all art if you can, but it doesn't necessarily, I don't restrict that. You can do what you like, really. And I worked as a freelance artist for Kew Gardens for a number of years, whilst working in a normal job to earn real money. And then I have always been fascinated with the plants and the structure that they have, which inevitably led to me making every drawing into some form of 3D art. Generally in those days it was furniture, but it just started off the inquiry to 3D. And as I worked for a firm of architects as a graphic designer, I started doing evening classes in hot metals, welding, and then just started seriously experimenting in sculptures. So that's what got me where I am now, but it's been a very long and slow process. But it's probably best to look at some of the slides or the show that they have ready, but that gives you an idea of where I came from. You Blew Me Away, and she's a very personal response to an emotional, she's a very emotive piece for me. To put it basically, it was about me meeting my husband, so it was a very emotional response, but it could relate to anything. It can convey a deep sense of your own emotions, the responses to people, your environment, and the experiences we have all gone through. So for me, it's very personal, but for somebody looking, so lots of people can read lots of things into that sculpture, and I think they have over the years. I was very lucky to get a placement at the Plymouth College of Art as part of a scheme called Artists Access to Art, which is AA2A, which gives professional artists a chance to use facilities in a college that they wouldn't normally have. You put a proposal forward and it gives you the chance to realise a piece of art. This was the lady that I wanted to create. And the art college was fantastic. They provided all the facilities, and I created the original version of this. This one that you're seeing now is number 8. So I made the original one in 2008 and never thought I'd make another one again. Thankfully, my next door neighbour bought it, so she stood in the garden and I was very happy. But then an image, as is the internet, an image got out in the wide world, and I had a massive response to it, which really kicked off. I'd already been a sculptor before, creating dance sculptures, but this particular sculpture kicked off something much, much bigger, which shows the success of the internet and the World Wide Web. Anyway, she now has 9 sisters around the world, mostly in Europe and the USA. But she started off a series called the Blown Away series, understandably, and it's a response to emotional issues in our lives, but also how the environment affects us, how people affects us, how life affects us. So all of the sculptures within that series are to be a part of that. So she started that off. And so the next slide, and they're all made of discarded pieces of material, all those car parts, tools, nuts, bolts, they're all beautifully made, beautifully crafted by skilled craftsmen. They're put into an engine, they have a fantastic energy within that engine or whatever piece of mechanical machinery that they're in. And then when that piece of machinery is discarded, they're thrown away. And yes, these days they are recycled, melted back down, but they're still beautiful pieces. My dad used to build a lot of cars, and I was surrounded by these pieces all my life. And I just felt they shouldn't be thrown away, and they should be reused, re-energized and recycled into something new. And a piece of art seemed to be the most appropriate piece. The reason they're all of a sort of smallish 5'2" lady is because that's me. And I'm the only willing participant really to have a plaster of Paris mold to create these pieces, because it's not a particularly nice experience, I have to say. But I managed to create one mold, which has lasted me, thankfully, a nice long time, and into which I place all these metal pieces to create these figures. So I call them a canvas. So I base my sculptures on a canvas of my body, and that canvas is to portray either emotions, words, feelings, environmental issues, psychological issues. So erosion is about really the effect of climate change on our planet and what is happening to our planet due to climate change, due to massive weather changes, deforestation, and erosion of soil, which then creates problems for people all over the world. They have massive mudslides, they have crops that fail. So using my body to be eroded and blown away, losing arms, limbs, is my way of interpreting that. You could interpret it in many different ways. And that's what I feel sculpture and art is about. It's, I have a view and a title for my pieces, and that's what I want to say, but it's not being exclusive. Anybody can interpret it as they see fit and as they wish. So that's what art is about. It's to provoke a discourse in what you're feeling at the time as the viewer, and what the artist is feeling at the time that she or he created it. So duality, the next piece, is a strange piece, but it was actually based on a mathematical theorem, which I'm not particularly, so I'm going to read it out because I'll never remember the words, but it's duality in the dictionary is a symmetry within a mathematical system such that a theorem remains valid if certain objects, relations, or operations are interchanged. So that sounds a bit of a math piece, but what it's really saying is that I feel all of us are not just one person. We have several parts to us, and it's about us communicating with those different parts of ourselves, and that the only way that we can be honest with ourselves is to communicate with those, and the only way we can be aware of how other people are around us is to be sure of communicating with ourselves before we put ourselves on anybody else. I think, and it's also a little bit of heart over mind and mind over heart, so it's expressing that part with the energy flowing between the two parts of ourselves. So that's what duality is about. So again, they've got a narrative. I personally feel sculptures should have a narrative, and I think there are so many artists out there that create a narrative. These pieces, the Spirits in the Sky, are different. I wouldn't say they have a narrative, but they have an energy. So I am fascinated with ballet dancers, not being a dancer myself. Watching ballet dancers is stunning, and I sit and watch them and I draw them as they move. And although my drawings aren't up to much, they have the essence of the movement, and that's what these dancer sculptures have, is the essence of that movement. They're not anatomically correct, but they have the lines of the aluminium create the lines of the movement, and they're also on flexible stilts, so they move in the wind, and they dance, so they're constantly dancing. Barcelona Tango was a strange one. I mean, it is a very strange figure. I often ask people which they think is male and which they think is female, because it's a couple doing the tango. And they are a strange figure, but they were one of those happy mistakes which you often get in art. I was bashing a piece of aluminium and the light caught the aluminium, and these figures sprang out at me. So when you get a moment like that, you have to sit down and capture it and draw it, and otherwise the freshness of that vision is gone if you don't do it straight away, because the energy of that is gone. If I was to have done it 3 hours later, it would have lost that urgency. So in quite a lot of the work, I try to work quickly. So those dancers, Barcelona Tango, the original sketches are quick to try and catch that dynamic energy that dancers have. Barcelona Tango was not a quick piece to make, because it was what you call a maquette, and then you have a bronze cast after that. So that's how those occurred. Perhaps the next slide would be great. Now these are what I would call quick sketches in aluminium and resin. I use quite a lot of epoxy resin. So those pieces, when you're making maquette, I'm bending wire and I'm putting resin on really quickly. So they are probably only took me 2 to 3 hours each to make those. And it was based on life drawings. I do a lot of life drawing because drawing is important. And those life drawings each were only 1 minute. So I progressed from a 1 minute drawing to a 2-hour sculpture, which is then cast in bronze, which is obviously a lot longer process, but I'm hoping that the energy from that very first sketch is still there. I'm puzzled with these particular ones because the lady I drew was a beautiful, voluptuous lady, but somehow she's been shrunk and thinned down, which doesn't seem fair really, but that's how things turn out sometimes, so there's not much you can do about that. And yeah, so that's those two. So this is one that I created only 2 years ago, and it's really, about conveying the need for us all at some point in our lives to break free of the limitations that people impose upon us, or we impose upon ourselves. You know, we're all good at putting ourselves into chains and saying that we can't do anything. And if that's ourselves doing it, then we need every motivation to break free from that. If other people are doing that, then yes, maybe we need assistance to do that. Or we need to identify why we feel that way and what other people are, how other people are causing that. So this is about breaking free from your chains. So it literally is made out of chains. It was a bit of a headache to make, I have to say. But once I got the vision in my head, I was determined to try and make it work. Structurally, some pieces don't always stand up, and stand up, I mean literally, and you have to struggle to make that work. But she did. She's a little bit flexy, but she works. So, but each chain had to be welded 4 or 5 times. So that's every link had to be welded 4 or 5 times. So it took quite a lot, and that great big gap in the middle as you're breaking out of your mold presented a structural issue, but managed to get past it. So I was quite proud of that one, because it is, although it's similar to You Blew Me Away, the principle is obviously that she's breaking free and achieving what she can achieve in her potential. So hopefully we all manage to do that in some way, whether that be big or small, it doesn't really matter. Well, the next slide is the KISS, which is my most recent one. It's one that I've had in my head for a very long time. But because I have rather not fallen into the trap, but as an artist, I still feel the need to have an income, make money. And, you know, to make money, you sometimes have to lose some of the creative process, because I've been answering buyers want to buy my sculptures, which is lovely. I insist upon all my sculptures being handmade by me. I wouldn't want it any other way, but obviously then that takes time. So the last 3 or 4 years have been making an income, which rather halts the creative process, of which I'm not entirely proud of, because I think as an artist you must always progress, but equally you have to make a living. So this one has been in my head for a long time, and finally got to get out a couple of years ago. And I'm now caught again in that trap because people like it. So I'm now just finished completing number 3. I only make 9 limited editions of any sculpture, otherwise I think I'd go insane. And I try and space out the ones that I do, but don't get me wrong, I enjoy making every single one of them, because all of them are different, and all of them go to different places and to different people. And sometimes I'm lucky enough to deliver them myself, and that's sometime in Europe, and therefore you get to meet the people who buy them, and they're always extraordinary people, so that's a great privilege to meet them. So this one was a joy to meet, and it starts and finishes, it hasn't finished the Blown Away series, but in a way the first one, You Blew Me Away, was a very personal response, and this is a very personal response to the most important relationship that I have. And this sculpture changes as you move around. They are just touching, they touch, they kiss, and they merge. You see the inside of them and you see the outside of them as you move around. And the first kiss is all about massive anticipation and explosive energy. So that's what this is. So when they're put together, they don't quite touch, and that's really important. So those are my latest sculptures.
Thank you. I mean, they just are. Yes, absolutely. They're so incredible. I know you have the blew me away element, but they all blew me away. They're just really incredible.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for listening.
No, you're so very welcome. No, I can hear an echo. Can anybody else hear an echo when I'm speaking? If not, that's fine, I'll carry on. So what I'd like to know is, Penny, would you mind if I just quickly bring 2 people that were waiting to get in? I'll just bring them in and let them introduce themselves, and then I'll open it up for questions, if that's okay. Thank you. Helen and Ellie, welcome. Helen, would you like to just introduce yourself, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. I was just saying I only caught the last part of that, but it was absolutely inspiring, stunning artworks. I really enjoyed those. Thank you so much, Penny. So I'm Helen Martin-G. I'm founder of Pink Shoe, which is a network for female leaders worldwide. I'm also an entrepreneur, a House of Lords advisor, and I try to do as much as I can to support this incredible group, which I really believe in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ellie?
Oh. Hi everybody, my name's Ellie Kerr. I run Merseyside Women of the Year and I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm completely blown away by the artwork. It was absolutely amazing, fantastic and lovely to be here. I'm sorry it was late, but my son came in from school, so there was all hell broke loose because he's not used to being in school, and it's his last day today. He's broken up from school. Broken up for what, we ask ourselves? I do not know. So anyway, thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome. If anybody has any questions for Penny, really, but before you do, can I just say one thing, because I'm in awe. The kiss for me just made me think of the pandemic, because they weren't quite touching. So of all the pieces that I've seen, obviously the one that I've used with a poem, but that one for me really did represent what we're all experiencing at the moment, in terms of that kind of wanting to touch but just not quite being able to. So that, sorry, I just had to say that, because that's what that made me think of. But yes, if anybody has any questions. Lady Sharon.
Hello, Penny. It's not really a question, because through all that I was coming up with questions and you were answering them all the time. It's amazing. Your work's amazing. The one I really like is the ballerina one. I used to be a ballerina myself, and the thought of that moving as the wind catches it would just be so beautiful and delicate and elegant, and I could just see it. I can see it in every piece you make. Your work's amazing, and it's so beautiful. Yeah, I was coming up with so many questions, but you answered everyone.
Noreen?
Hi, actually just more of curiosity. You say you do about 9 from each edition?
Yes.
Do you vary them when you're doing them slightly, or
each
just...
one, if it's, for instance, the You Blew Me Away, the Kiss, the scrap metal ones, each one will look similar, but they're all going to be unique. They use the same mold, but all the pieces will be different. The strands will be different. Each one will be subtly different. So unlike a bronze casting, which is exactly the same every time, you can never call these the same. So they are unique.
And how long does it take you to do when you actually do something like the Kiss or
the Kiss?
The
Is the one, obviously being 2 figures takes me a long time, and it's a really awkward one, because with the way their hands touch is never the same each time, despite the fact that I have a fixed mold, and you have to get it absolutely right. You must make sure the fingertips touch. It's all very important that those details are right. So I can fiddle away for hours trying to get that right, but it takes me about 6 to 8 weeks.
Wow.
And that's working full time in the studio, 9 to 5, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So, and you've got to collect all the bits and pieces as well. So.
Yeah. And one last question, because you mentioned you started at Kew Gardens, and I am a Kew Gardens fan. I'm a friend of theirs. I visit regularly. Do you have any of your works there? Because they did usually have some sculpture.
I think I did visit there recently, and there's some interpretation boards in the Azalea Garden, the Peony Garden, and the Hellebore.
Okay, yes.
So they're still there. I think they've still got my name on, but that's a long time ago now. That's late 90s.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I won't hog the questions.
Okay, Helen?
Thank you. And a question, Penny. You talked about if you don't work immediately, that inspiration goes, or you have to get that done very quickly. So what happens to it? Because you've obviously had those creative thoughts. If you don't manage to convert them into action quickly, where do they go, and what do you then do? Because those thoughts must be a theme that are going through your life, really.
They do stay there. I mean, in the case of the Barcelona tango, which is where I brought that up, it was a reflection. So that reflection would have been gone in a minute. And I'm not entirely patient, even though I trained as a scientific illustrator and all these drawings and paintings took me forever. I've lost that patience. So my drawings now are much more immediate. And I feel if I don't capture it right away, that energy of that idea has gone. The idea clearly hasn't gone, but for me, that moment has gone. For that type of sculpture, for the Kiss and You Blew Me Away, they can mull around in my brain for a very long time. They get turned around in my head. I don't draw them, I go straight to making, because I can be a bit frustrated with some of my drawings. So yeah, those ideas stay in my head. And sometimes they get discarded straight away and they never make it onto paper or into a sculpture. So I can discard an awful lot before it gets anywhere. But hopefully I keep a lot of that for another time when I get the time to make something new.
Thank you.
Okay.
Susan?
Fabulous, beautiful, beautiful statues. On your slides, they're all presented, they seem to be outside. Are most of them on show in different places?
Yes, I exhibit generally 1 to 2 times a year, sometimes 3 times a year, generally in an exhibition with lots of other sculptors in a big garden, sometimes National Trust gardens, private gardens, small galleries, but I tend not to do galleries that often because my stuff doesn't really fit in a gallery particularly well. Most of those pictures are taken near where I live. Me and my husband drag them up to the top of the hill and take a photograph and drag them back down again before they head off to their owners, because they're normally commissions, so they are then due to go and get shipped all over the world. So yes, that's where most of them are taken.
You said you drag them up the hill. How heavy are they?
Jolly heavy. Yeah, thank God for my husband. But it's hard work, especially the male half of the Kiss. He's a chunky chap. So yeah, we're quite strong. So we've had to learn to do that.
Okay, Alice?
Thank you so much for sharing your work, Penny. Honestly, I'm just totally in awe. I think my question lies with how do you manage to convey so much in so little? Like the forms are so simple but so perfect. And have you always had quite a minimalist style, or?
Pretty well. I mean, when I started doing the drawings for Q, plants, seed heads, leaves would all become simplified and become a table or a chair, but very minimalized. So yes, you're paring down what you feel is the essence of what you're hoping to portray down to what you feel is the minimum that's required to get that image over. I have made other sculptures in scrap metal, one called In a Spin, who was a full lady, so she was front and back, and she was going up in a whirlwind of love, but that whirlwind wasn't very clear. So although I still have her, she's not as clear and as immediate. So some work and some don't. And sometimes you don't discover that till you've built the whole thing, and that can be a bit distressing, but you have to go through that process.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Anyone else have any questions? Oh, Lady Sharon.
I have actually thought of one. You said these sculptures are a mould of yourself. The male Kiss one, who's that moulded on?
That's my husband, but I didn't want to put the poor man through the process because he has a fair amount of chest hair, and that would be very unfair.
Oh.
So in this instance, we use modern technology, and you can digitize photographs of yourself. This didn't happen when I made the original model, that wasn't available, but it is now. And they then cut models out of polystyrene. Right. And then I can make a mold out of that. Yeah, it would have been very unfair on him, I think.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for all of your questions. Penny, just wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'd just like to say again, on behalf of everybody, thank you for your time and sharing your artwork with us. It's been a privilege to sort of have it in our session with me.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for you know, you all do such amazing things. In particular, you do amazing things for lots of people, and I'm sure they hugely appreciate that. But I appreciate that. I think it's amazing what you all do. So thank you for that, and thank you for having me.
Well, you're very, very welcome. So if you just stay with us whilst we wrap up the session, and then Sarah will let everybody escape. So we're not going to do our health and well-being session today formally. Aaron, again, hasn't been able to join this week. If you remember, he's having some work done at home. But he will do an insert for us that we will put into the finished product. And if anybody would like that before, then we can send it along to you, because his words of wisdom every week are really very helpful. So we'll share that with us. And unless anybody has any specific questions about this session, if there's anything anybody wants to bring up about anything I've talked about today before we end our session today, if anyone wants to say that now. That's great. That always means I've hopefully explained it fully enough, so that's great. So really all that we'll do now is just say thank you so much, and that brings our session to a conclusion today. If you do have any further questions for Penny and you didn't feel okay asking them online today, please send them to me and I'll forward them. And again, great to see everyone today, and look forward to seeing you all next week.